Fergie said about him that she would marry Andrew all over it again. What do you read about that?
Well, in a way she has, because, I mean, they're never quite divorced, never quite married, are they, those two? I mean, you know, they're living in the same place, which is a curious arrangement. She's been very much defending Andrew at every opportunity. She said, I think, unless I misquote her, that he was the best man in the world. Well, I mean, you know, I think it's a stretch to come to that conclusion, but, you know, maybe love is blind. That's the only conclusion I can reach from what she's said. But she's also had a lot of dubious connections over the years. She took £15,000 from Jeffrey Epstein to help pay off her debts. She took money from David Rowland, this Tory banker, which will pay off her debts. She said, by the way, that the Epstein money had been a terrible mistake and she would pay it back. And when she was asked some years later, had she paid it back, she said, no comment, which I suggest the answer is the first word in that answer rather than the second word. It's probably what we can conclude from that. But she's also been caught on film with that fake reporter offering, you know, well, saying for £500,000 she can get access to Andrew. You know, selling access to Andrew. So she hasn't got a very unblemished record herself. So in a sense, both of them behave in the same sort of way.
Was that the fake sheikh?
Yes.
I remember that now. So that was someone pretending to be a sheikh from some Middle Eastern country.
Yeah, and saying, would you know, I want to achieve something. And she said, well, I can get access to Andrew, for example, and wanted £500,000 for it. So, I mean, you know, she's on record, she's on film with these things.
I suppose it's an awkward thing. You're born into this dynasty, family.
Well, she wasn't, of course, but yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. But Andrew, in Andrew's case, or yeah, I suppose you might marry into it as Meghan or as Fergie has done, and you're supposed to be dutiful, or do your duties for the country, and in return you get a handsome salary of sorts. But then you get perhaps offers. Hey, look, you know, I can meet someone and get loads of money, but I shouldn't because that's against. Yeah. You know, so it's complicated.
Well, look, the royal family is not accountable in the way they should be. Every other part of the public service in this country is accountable through rules and regulations which are enforced, through freedom of information, through laws. The royal family is exempt from these by and large, which means that if it wants to behave badly, is not going to be found out probably. At least that's the theory. So it does behave badly, and you have to rely on the members of the royal family behaving in a proper way. Now, do they behave in a proper way? I don't know. Some of them might do. I mean, Princess Anne might do. She's probably the best of the bunch in terms of propriety. But a lot of them don't. And the number of occasions when they've been rumbled and caught offering money for something they shouldn't, offered money for something they shouldn't want, they shouldn't be doing, and accepting that offer, or accepting gifts they shouldn't be accepting from people who shouldn't be offering them. Those sorts of things going on. And if you're not subject to FOI and freedom of information, then you have to exert yourself a sense of propriety and say no. And if you don't say no, will you get found out? You know, the temptation is to accept something, and that's human nature. But it's particularly bad in the royal family when there is a general sense of entitlement, which has run through centuries of the royal family. And by the way, it doesn't run through royal families in Europe. They're quite different. If you look at the Scandinavian royal families and the Benelux countries, I mean, they don't behave in that way. It's only the British royal family that still behaves in this kind of imperial way, as the Russian Tsar would have done, or the German emperor, or the Austrian-Hungarian emperor, or the French king. You know, they're still in that mentality, that mindset from centuries ago.
Is that because they have more powers? I think those royal families are sort of only there to wave, aren't they?
Well, because I think they've accepted nowadays in the Benelux countries and Scandinavian countries that they are in democracies, and they are figureheads who are there for a very limited purpose. They've accepted that. You know, I was in Sweden while I was a minister, I think I was, and I was at this event, this kind of party thing, and I was chatting to this woman in the corner for about 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I found she was a princess in the Swedish royal family. You cannot imagine that informality in this country. You just can't.
Did you get her number? Princess. I mean,
that would be telling.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how Meghan and Harry met, but I think it was similar circumstances. Wasn't it some sort of party and got chatting to one another? She'd never heard of him.
No. Well, that's probably the best way.
So she says.
But you see the Dutch royal family, you know, they're out shopping and, behaving normally. And that's what people want. They want people who are normal ahead of the country. They don't want what we have in this country where, if you're invited to Buckingham Palace or you're invited to meet one of the royal family, you have to all line up. And then, you line up, and then whichever the member of the royal family says, comes along the line and says something to you or doesn't say something to you. I mean, it's most bizarre the way they behave.
See, I feel in two minds about the royals. I don't have very strong feelings either way, but I don't like, I'm obviously uncomfortable, as you say, with the lack of democracy involved and the lack of fairness, that there's just this family who just has money, has land, can do what they want, it seems to be unchecked. At the same time, we don't have much pomp and ceremony anymore in the country.
Well, you can have pomp and ceremony without a royal family, as a matter of fact. I mean, you don't have to have it. I mean, the palace in Europe, which is visited by most people, is the Palace of Versailles. And the French monarchy ended in 1848. Mm-hmm. In fact, you could argue if the British monarchy wasn't around, Buckingham Palace would have more visitors than it has now. Well, so you don't have to have that. You don't have to get rid of tripping the colour on. You can keep all these things, there's no reason to get rid of them. I mean, they're not necessarily a function of the royal family. You can keep what you like and get rid of what you don't like.
God Save the King and the sort of, the national anthem before the football.
The national anthem, let's just talk about the national anthem. The national anthem should be there as a unifying song, which everybody in the country can sign up to, without exception. And most of them are around the world. Canada, oh Canada. Who's going to object to that? Particularly now, actually, with Trump and everything else at the White House.
Sure.
But I mean, people in Canada can sign up to Canada, oh Canada. I don't know anyone who doesn't. But this is the only national anthem in the world, as far as I know, which first of all requires you to believe in God, and secondly requires you to exalt one particular individual who happens to be the monarch at the time. And if you happen to be a Republican or don't believe in God, the national anthem is uncomfortable for you. Mm-hmm.
I think we've got an identity problem, though, because if it wasn't that, if we took the royals away, what would our national anthem shout about?
Well, you could either invent one, or you could annex one that's already there, like Jerusalem or something like that.
Well, what would the lyrics? We could, a lot of, even Churchill. People don't like Churchill. They don't want Churchill statues.
You don't mention people, do you? You mention the country. You just mention the values. You mention the values of the country, the fairness, the justice. You can mention all those sorts of values, or you could mention the stuff that's really good about Britain. The environment, the countryside. You could create something. I mean, we got Flower of Scotland, which was used for rugby matches and so on. Mm-hmm. They're very happy with that. We can invent something down here for England.
Everyone wants it to be that Jerusalem song, don't they?
Well, I mean, Jerusalem's a very, very powerful anthem. And if you look at the French national anthem, of course, the Marseillaise, which is a wonderful song in terms of the kind of feeling. It's very kind of Gallic, but I mean, it inspires you when you hear it, even if you don't understand the words. I mean, the words are quite brutal, as a matter of fact, but because they relate to the French Revolution. But it's a fantastic anthem. If you've ever seen the film Casablanca, which a lot of people have seen, and there's a scene in Casablanca where the kind of Nazis in the cafe are singing their kind of Stein songs. And the French exiles start up with the Marseillaise, which Humphrey Bogart says, okay, he tells them he can do it. And they sing the Marseillaise. And it's so powerful. And every time I see that particular clip of that film, I'm in tears, because it's just such a powerful moment in the film, and there's such a powerful song. And actually, I found out afterwards that the people who were singing it were all extras, and they were actually exiles from Nazi Germany.
Wow.
And therefore, it meant a lot to them, and it comes across in the film. But I mean, I'm sorry, this isn't necessarily anti-royal, but God Save the King is such a dirge as a song, it's not going to inspire anybody.